Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. So, because of the packed day that we have, I'm sorry I'm out of breath. I've been running around since 7 o'clock this morning. Okay, we got it. We're gonna try to move this beginning part a little bit along quickly so we stay on time. Welcome. If you haven't been to Bronx Community College, welcome. I'm sorry if I'm looking in different directions because I can't see none of you. So don't think that I'm just kind of going off script here. My name is Albert Robinson. I'm the Director of Online Support here, but I am a founding member of the Bronx EdTech Showcase. And we've been doing this for 14 years. When we started this, Carlos from Hostos and Steve from Lehman, we got together one day and said, we're doing individual showcases. Let's see if we could put it all together. We came up with the name, and we wasn't sure how long this would go on. 14 years later, it's here, still going strong. So I guess we're doing something right. The microphone is getting louder, guys, with feedback. Okay, got it. Thank you. So we want to get this morning started, but I do want to talk a little bit about what it does, what it takes to get this thing going. And then I'll come back a little bit later after our presidents do a welcome. It's about maybe 30 people that helped to put this together. We start a year out. So right after we finish this one, probably next week, we'll have a meeting to get ready for the next one. And we'll let you know where the next one will be later on today. So, and we'll do some housekeeping and kind of, let you know where to go, where to be, what to do, and so forth. Carlos is somewhere out there. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide, Carlos. We want to thank our sponsors, VoiceThread and Turned It In. If you guys have time, please talk with them. They're in the lobby of 131 when you go into the breakout rooms. So you'll be able to speak with them all day. If your campus don't have, well, everyone has Turned It In that works in CUNY. If you work outside of CUNY, you can talk with the Turned It In people. They'll be able to connect you to a customer service rep. If you don't have VoiceThread, then you can talk with them. They'll show you how to get it and what it's about. But they're our sponsors for this year, so we want to give them a round of applause. Okay. So, of course, thanks, Carlos. If you're going on social media today, you're enjoying things, you want to take pictures, use that hashtag, right? So we can get all of the credit for it. But without wasting any more time, I want to start it off with the president's welcome. And I want to bring up BCC President, Larry Johnson.
All right, good morning, everyone. Oh, it's working. Good morning. Good morning. Oh, okay, this is right. Good morning. Good to see all of you. Such a pleasure to be here. First, I want to recognize my CUNY colleagues, my partner in the work that we do, and our great president, Lehman College, Fernando Delgado. Round of applause, please. Thank you for being here, sir. And we also have representing our dear colleague, Coco De Filippis from Hostos Community College. And we have Andrea Fabrizio. Give her a round of applause at Hostos Community College. So this is a very special moment, as Albert mentioned, and I do want to take an opportunity to celebrate all of those who have been participants in serving on the community. If they would just stand quickly, we have Albert, we have Mark, we have Stephen, Asma. If you're all here, please stand, please to be recognized. Carlos, Kate, and Wilfredo. Thank you. Thank you so much for your support and the work that you're doing. Congratulations to you. And a special thank you to all the contributors and all of our guests that are here from CUNY Central, and certainly those of sponsorships for today. We greatly appreciate the work. So as we think about this work, it really represents the ethos of what we call redefining what's possible. As we think about the work that we do, as we think about this topic of the integration of AI, how do we navigate this moment? It is something that we have to think about. We just recently, on yesterday, discussed at College Senate the role of AI and how faculty and staff could choose to use it in their work and how they can prepare students for the careers of tomorrow. And of course, as you know, it's welcomed differently depending on the context, but we're glad that you're embarking upon the journey of really tackling this conversation so that our students could be ready for the workforce. So when you think about the work today and how technology is evolving rapidly, it has accelerated the pace and it continues to shape the way we live, learn, work, and play. From landline phones to mobile devices, many of you carry. I don't know if you still have, how many of you have landline phones still? Oh my, okay, God bless you. God bless you. But it's still a need for it, right? From landline phones to mobile devices, from carrying music in our pockets and now navigating the emergence of artificial intelligence. Each shift has required us to rethink what's possible. And higher education has always been a place where those conversations are held. We are pedagogues. We teach students to think critically and analytically, and that is what this day represents. And that is where we examine change, we challenge assumptions, and we prepare society to move forward with engagement and with intention. And when we have these conversations, it's from the place of what we're calling a constructive dialogue, and we're engaged in that across the university around framing how we think about the work, allowing us to express ourselves in a way that may not be received by all, but in a way that's constructive. And this is one of those topics, and we greatly appreciate the role of constructive dialogue and the norms that's being provided there and how we're being able to integrate that into these conversations. So as you begin this conversation today, I encourage you, as many of you already drink the Kool-Aid, to lean in, to challenge assumptions, and to really help us to understand how this work will really change the trajectory of lives, not only in New York City, but certainly across the globe. What I love about this work is that it is a shared partnership between Hostos, Lehman, and Bronx Community College. I believe, in my colleague, Dr. Delgado mentioned this is probably one of the boroughs where our colleges are, in terms of the synergy, there's so much great synergy, and to have these type of programs where we move them from campus to campus, or we're engaging in different discourse, but we do it as a Bronx family, and I love that. And within that same spirit of the Bronx family, I do want to now welcome to the podium my dear colleague, your colleague, my friend, and my brother, Fernando Delgado, to give opening comments. Give him a round of applause, please.
Now I'll use a quieter voice. I have a very wide impression. I won't do it. President Johnson, thank you. We started in CUNY at the same time. We went through orientation together. And not to him, because I'm very respectful of him, but when I talked to the other presidents, they said, oh, it seems like you have good relationships with the presidents. I'm like, well, you know, Daisy and I work closely together. And now that Larry's in the Bronx, of course we work together. I mean, he's my fellow brother from the desert. We both worked in Arizona for a number of years. Ask us, we know what a drought looks like. I apologize for how I look today. I spent some part of the morning at another great Bronx institution, Montefiore Hospital. I learned a new phrase, soft tissue injury. For those of you of a certain age, you may enjoy the fact that said soft tissue injury occurred while I was in bed sleeping last night. So I have no idea how it happened. I do know at 6 o'clock my foot was swollen and it hurt a lot. And the doctor, who looked about 35, just said, yeah, no, we'll drain it, it'll be fine. Here's a naproxen and something only somebody that age would say to me. You know, stuff happens when you get older. No, it's fine. I said, thank you, doctor. I know what kind of car you drive out there, and I grew up in that neighborhood in California. I'm thrilled to be here. I will make one observation, but before I do, I'm going to ask, how many of you teach? Okay. I want you to look at the room. You can take the student out of the classroom, huh? But not the reverse. In every classroom that we've ever taught something like this, we've had to begin the teaching by saying, oh, no, everybody come on down. And look at us, 10, 15, 20, 30 years away from being students. We're just like, whoosh. Some things never change as we grow older. And look, I had to sit down here. If I was in your shoes, I would be in the upper right-hand corner with my head up against the wall, because that's how I went through my undergraduate experience. But I do thank you all for being here. You know, the Bronx gets, sometimes we get a raw deal, and we experience that, and that's part of the chip on our shoulder, and hopefully we use that chip as productively as possible. But having come to these EdTech showcases for a number of years, what I can reify is that A, President Johnson is absolutely right. The level of collaboration across our campuses and across levels of our organization is palpable in ways that I don't think it's palpable in the other boroughs of New York City. We definitely are in this together. And secondly, whatever else people have stereotypes of the Bronx, the fact that we have showcases like this and people on the instructional support side take these things seriously in terms of how we can do better, how we can meet our students where they're at better and more effectively, how we can help prepare them to be better and more effective students, and on the other side of their student career, more effective professionals. And that is a palpable piece of how we communicate to ourselves and amongst each other, suggests to us that we in the Bronx are not lagging the other 5 boroughs. In many ways, as educational institutions, we could be leading the other 4 boroughs and CUNY Central. And you know, presidents, we set a culture and we reinforce things, but our cabinet members, our directors, our staffs, you all do the work, and I want to thank you for the hard work that you do in extraordinarily complicated times. It's hard to keep up with everybody's demands in technology. It's hard to keep up with everybody's anxieties about technology, and it's certainly hard to help people of my generation be the best teachers that we can be with this new generation of technology and the needs and perceptions of our students. Last week, I had a conversation with our media production people, and a couple of students said, "Oh, you used to do media production?" I said, "Oh, yeah, the good old days when we did Betamax and 3/4-inch tape." And one young man said, "I don't know, what is that?" And I said, exactly. And that's why you wouldn't want me teaching your class, because I was really good in 1991. I'm not so sure I'm going to be real effective these days. But I really am good with Scotch tape and film. Again, they didn't get that either, because they've never seen film. Technology is not going away. AI is not going away. As a citizen of the world, I have profound doubts about the technologies around AI. And honestly, I'm not even worried so much about what we can do in higher ed to make sure students continue to learn and acquire their own knowledge and wisdom and discernment. But mine's more fundamental. What are we going to do with all that wasted water? You know, how's that going to affect our populaces? What's going to be the persistent impact on the global south? Will AI, because of the nature impacts on the global south, create ever more of a digital divide and concentrations of knowledge, force, and power? Maybe we need to talk about those things more. And certainly there are spaces for them in and outside the academy. But at the same time, we also know that our students are dabbling in this, and they're engaging in it. And they have their own feelings about it. And there's a stereotype that says people of my generation are opposed to AI, and people of my daughter's generation, who's 22 and going to be walking across the graduation stage in 2 weeks, are all for it. And whenever I ask her about AI, because she does creative writing, she says, "I hate that, because it's stealing my ideas from me and letting other people represent them." So it's complicated out there. There are ethical and practical considerations, but there are also really cool uses. And in tough budget times, they help you. Lehman used to have a $90,000 a year speechwriter. She left. We didn't replace her for 2 reasons. One, I mean, I got a PhD in speech. I ought to be able to sort of figure my way around a speech. But secondly, even when I need a draft, we figured out very early we can send prompts, and I am shocked sometimes at how good those first drafts are. Now, they're not as human as I'd like them to be. ChatGPT and the other tools don't have my wonderful sense of humor. They haven't yet, as learning models, understood that part of what makes humor humor isn't the words and the timing of the words. It's the spacing between the words, but it might get there. In the meantime, it's allowed me to redeploy that money to do other things to make a difference at Lehman that were more impactful than just having a presidential speechwriter. Our admissions team uses them to help model and communicate to prospective students. Our advancement team uses it in lieu of somebody making cold calls because we can customize the messages. And they have proven, at least in the first year, to be more effective. So there's clearly spaces where we've seen this, but it is complicated. And you can't turn to your friendly neighborhood president to have all the answers, because candidly, I don't. I have conflicted feelings on both sides of the issues regarding certain forms of technology and AI. But conversations amongst practitioners and experts are always what we need, because that's what we do best in higher education, right? That's how we get to discernment, by having really profound conversations about things that matter in the spaces that we work in. So I want to thank you all. Hopefully, the last 2 minutes got really dark and serious. My bullet points didn't suggest I was going to go there, but here we are. That's what happens when you don't write the speech all the way out. So I hope there is time for levity and creativity and fun. But y'all work in technology, and there are some serious issues out there that we have to grapple with, and many of you, when you come back to our campuses, are some of the most important voices as we have those conversations. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for coming out, staying engaged. You know, as always, yay Bronx. I will say thank you for giving me the time and your patience, and I will turn it over to Provost Fabrizio, and she will relay her kind words on behalf of her institution and her president, who President Johnson and I will tease incessantly when we next have lunch with her.
Thank you so much, President Delgado. Good morning, everyone. Wonderful to see all of you on this beautiful May day. Thank you, President Johnson, for hosting us. I'm delighted to be here on behalf of Hostos Community College's president, Dr. Daisy Coco de Filippis, to bring greetings to all of you. It is just so exciting that for 14 years, our 3 campuses have been coming together to learn together, to share together around the questions of technology and the connection between technology and education, especially as we know, as has already been shared this morning, technology is ever evolving, right? And often more rapidly than we think about what we're doing in our classrooms, right? Technology changes every day. It changes from month to month, especially in these past years. We're seeing that very quick evolution of technology. So it's never solved, right? The question of how does education and technology, how do they work together, never gets solved, never gets completed. It's ongoing. And as educators, we continue to engage in these conversations. So I just want to congratulate you for doing that year after year, and congratulate the leadership who brings this together year after year, because it really is a wonderful space to learn together and to think together. As we know, technology often comes with its anxieties, right? Throughout history, technology comes with anxieties of what will become obsolete, what will this replace, what will this do to our humanity? And these are very real questions, right? Particularly with artificial intelligence. But I wanted to share with you something from our students at Hostos that we found very profound these past few weeks. We had this lovely focus group with our student leaders on campus, where we brought them together to ask them, you know, what are you doing with AI in the classes? Are you using it? Do you have challenges with it? Just to get their feedback. And they shared so many wonderful things, really insightful things. But the one that I thought was most relevant to talking with you this morning was they said, you know, it's a tool. And if you can't think critically, then you can't use the tool. Right? And I think that that's what this showcase is about every year, right? That technology on its own is a thing, but it's the humanity that we bring to it. It's the critical thinking. It's our own intelligence that helps it advance us and helps it to enhance our creativity and give us freedom to do more creative things and more intellectual engagement, because it frees us up from other things. And just looking at your programming this morning about integration and intentionality and the embracing of technology and sharing together, that is really a beautiful spirit of looking at this relationship between education and technology, and I want to congratulate you on that and wish you a wonderful showcase. So thank you.
can we get the light back over here? So now, thank you, presidents, for your welcomes. We're gonna move into the fireside chat, which we have some really excellent topics to discuss. So to the panelists, if you could start making your way up to the stage, and our moderator, Steve Castellano from Lehman, will be taking over from here. Thank you.
Thanks, Albert. Hi, everyone. Glad you're all here. Let's let everybody get seated. Okay. So I want to do a quick poll first. We have a number of different constituents here. We have faculty, staff, we have advisors, we have students. So I'm going to read off a couple of statements, and I just want to know from you where you think this fits in your use of AI. So the first one is probably pretty obvious. I use AI regularly and find it very helpful. Yes, please. Okay, it's a good percentage. I'm curious about AI, but cautious about using it, because we don't know where it comes from. And finally, I try to avoid AI wherever possible. How many? Oh, a couple, okay. Few of you, okay, great. So this is what we're going to be discussing today, and we are going to talk with our panelists. I'm going to introduce them momentarily, and then we want to have a dialogue with you all here at our showcase. So our first panelist, Dr. Andrea Fabrizio, you just heard her speak. Would you like to stand up? Okay. Stephen Swibel. Stephen is the Digital Scholarship Librarian and Associate Professor at the Graduate Center. Jordan Kodner, who is Assistant Professor for Linguistics and Core Faculty of AI Innovation. And Shaden Reyes is right here at Bronx Community College in the IT department. And Tracy Hobbs. Tracy is a doctoral student at Lehman College, and she's in part of the Organizational Leadership and Development Program. So I have a short little statement that I'd like to make. Welcome you once again to our showcase. We're glad that you made the time in your day to come here and be with us. And we believe that you're going to enjoy this year's showcase because the focus is on artificial intelligence. And when many of us were in school, and you're going to have to show your age here, when you wanted to do research, what did we do? We went to the library. We took out books, and we hoped that the books were there, right? How many of us? Yeah. And we hoped that all the pages that we needed were there and not ripped out. So we did it the old-fashioned way. But as President Johnson and President Delgado said, that it's a new ball game now. So we're dealing with something that, it's like a frontier. The landscape has greatly changed, and our students today have the benefit of the technology to help them, but there are some questions that we need to ask, and that will be part of our discussion today. For example, where do we draw the line where AI can be considered a legitimate learning tool? Or can AI be considered as academic dishonesty? It's kind of a fine line. Is AI a learning tool, or is it a shortcut as a means to an end? Should faculty encourage students to use AI in their studies? Are we teaching students how to use AI effectively? What about teaching students how AI will affect the job market? Our CIO, Eddie Ruiz, every time I hear her speak, she always says it's really important that we teach the students how to use artificial intelligence so when they get to the workplace, they're going to have the skills to do the job, to get the job done. Is AI significantly disrupting entry-level hiring? Yeah, unfortunately, it is. I did some research, and some reports indicate that 35% of early career white-collar tasks could be automated, and up to 50% of entry-level tech roles have already been affected. So AI-exposed roles for early career workers have dropped 16% in the last 4 years. Are students anxious about AI? They certainly are. 51% of upcoming graduates worry that AI will lead to fewer job opportunities, and 47% of recent grads believe that AI has already impacted hiring in their fields. So these numbers are kind of staggering. Do we have an obligation to ensure that when our students graduate, they are AI literate? The majority of us would say yes, because AI is fast becoming part of our everyday life. We do hope that you enjoy our showcase and leave here with some knowledge about AI that you did not know before. And on behalf of my colleagues, and I'm going to ask them to stand up again, Carlos Guevara, Wilfredo Rodriguez, Kate Linslaw from Hostos Community College, Albert Robinson and Mark Leonardton of Bronx Community College, Osmond Eblett and myself, who have worked very diligently to assemble a great showcase over the past 14 years. Thank you all very much for joining us, and I hope that you have a good day that is filled with learning. So we've introduced our panelists. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes. So we have questions for instructors or administrators, and we also have questions for students and for both groups. So for the leaders, how do you think colleges should balance preparing students for AI-enabled workplaces while still ensuring that foundational knowledge and critical thinking skills are developed without over-reliance on AI? So Provost, I think maybe could you address that question?
This is the mic. Is it working?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's on.
All right. Thank you, and great to talk with all of you again. I think something we've been talking a lot about at our campus is that there's no one answer to that. This is a different answer in every discipline, and even in different courses within a discipline. I think one of the most important things that we could do is talk about this in our departments, in our conversations, because my background is English, right? So I know there's a very different conversation about the role of AI happening in our English department than happening perhaps in our natural sciences department or happening in our math department, right? And there are places where it can help. There are places, like I mentioned, we spoke with our students, and there was a digital music student who said, oh, it helped me learn how to, produce music more efficiently and more effectively, and it was still my work. But other places, not so much, right? So I think that that's a really important thing. I don't think there's one answer to that. I think it really matters on the field we're preparing our students for, and to engage them in those conversations, to not ignore it. Right, AI is there. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. And the more we have open conversations with our students about the integrity, the role of integrity in the field that they're in, how they can use it ethically as a tool, and where that line is, the better we're preparing them for being students in our institutions and then for their careers afterwards.
Thank you. Jordan, would you like to take a stab at that question? And then Stephen will go next. Yeah, it's on.
So my background in AI is largely from the technical side. My research areas are things like computational linguistics, cognitive science, and natural language processing. So I teach courses that have to do with the technology underlying these things, a lot more than our use of them today. So for something like introductory programming or understanding the basis behind how a language model works, I really find that the most important thing for AI literacy is just literacy itself in the domain. Something like programming, it's like one of those things like doing math problems where there's just no substitute to doing it manually the hard way over and over and over again, to develop those intuitions that you can then use later. So if you're using AI to produce outputs for you, how do you even assess critically whether they're on the right track, for example? You can't do that unless you already know, unless you're already a domain expert in this area. So this may seem a little paradoxical, but I'm teaching about AI, often using very little AI in the teaching itself in order to learn these foundations.
Stephen?
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me, by the way. I'm sure you hear this all the time, but you have a beautiful campus. My context is both in the finding materials side of librarianship, where students are doing research and AI is showing up in those areas, but also similarly teaching programming to humanities students. And I find that in both contexts, it really is about the domain expertise or the learning of the domain more than the AI tool that matters most. And I find myself in a little bit of a difficult position. I think Paradox is in that zone where the tools are amazing and allow for all kinds of fun and interesting uses, but actually they get in the way of learning unless used very delicately. And something that I hope to mention, or maybe I'll mention now, the concern that I often have when I see AI use in the classroom is that it shows up in the context of students doing research for the homework and essays that you assign them. And that's not necessarily visible to the faculty. And they're just being given to students by the vendors in a way that's not transparent. And we often see what are almost essentially homework machines showing up in these what we call discovery layers, right? So something like OneSearch has such a layer that we've turned off in many circumstances that essentially will do your 5-paragraph essay for you. And so I have a lot of concern about that, but also I have a lot of excitement about end case uses of these tools to enhance the things that the students are already learning how to do. And I hope we can expand on that.
Thank you. So my next question is for both students and administrators and faculty. And I kind of touched on it in the statement that I made. As AI becomes integrated into many professions, what responsibility do you think that we as educators have to ensure that graduates are literate in artificial intelligence? So would any of you like to take a, Tracy? What do you think do you think it's our responsibility to teach you about AI?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yes, hi. So yes, I am a doctoral student. I'm also a practitioner. My day-to-day role is using AI and building out tools for my organization. And because I am in the practice of using it, it's even more important for me to advocate that students are learning it and that they are being taught about AI literacy in the classroom. It's not just how to prompt. You know, going back to both of your points that it's domain expertise. Prompting is a set of instructions. If you don't know how to do the job, how can you properly prompt the tool to give you the output you're looking for? So in the classroom, I do think that is where it starts, especially when you think about the demographics that we do serve in the CUNY system. A lot of folks are coming through this institution and all the CUNY institutions because they're looking for better opportunities. They're looking to build that generational wealth for their families, things of that sort. So in order to prepare them for that, I do think that AI literacy is that start.
Shaden, let me hear from you.
Yes, I think that professors should be open about using AI in classrooms. I work as IT assistant and I see a lot of students that don't know how to use AI or have struggled a lot even using the internet. So I think if professors are more open about learning, is it working? About learning and doing research, it's going to help them, especially those students who are older.
And you told me just yesterday that you have a professor who encourages.
Yes, currently I'm taking a coding class, and the professor is very open about us using AI, especially when we get stuck. The only recommendation and rule that we have is that we have to be open and transparent about how we use it, where we use it, and document it in the assignment. So from what I've seen is that thanks to that, and thanks to the fact that we are not being graded or have a grade punishment because we use AI, all of the class is very transparent, and we are always talking about how we're learning using AI.
Question for Provost Fabrizio. Should AI be treated like a calculator or spreadsheet tool that eventually becomes standard practice, or more like an assistant that requires careful oversight?
Thank you for that. I think it is different than a calculator, right? I don't think you can equate a calculator and AI. I think they're very different tools. I think they're both tools. I think more closely to an assistant, right? And I think that going back to the transparency that was just mentioned, I think that's really the most important thing we can do with our students is be transparent about when it's an appropriate tool, right? You don't, just like all kinds of tools, right? Use a hammer for some things, a screwdriver for other things, right? There's an appropriate tool for an appropriate job. And sometimes AI is not the appropriate tool. But it can help. I mean, I myself, in my email, right, there's Copilot can sort your email and tell you what you didn't respond to, what you need to respond to. That's not ruining my integrity or my creativity. That's helping me, right? So I think that showing students where it can be a help, where it can advance their efficiency, where it's not taking over their creativity, and really, again, having those transparent conversations will empower them to make good choices about how they use AI.
So I want to stay with you for a second, Provost. What types of assignments or learning activities make it harder to misuse AI while still allowing the students to learn how to use it and be responsible with it?
Can you say the first part of that again? Sorry.
Sure. What types of assignments or learning activities would make it harder to misuse AI while still allowing the students to learn how to use it and use it responsibly?
Our English department, which again, coming from an English background, has done some really wonderful things with that exact question.
Oh.
And some of the professors are giving students AI-generated drafts, right? And having them look at it and say, do you think this is a good first draft? Does this answer the question that I've asked you to answer? And having the students really look and say, no, it's not. It's a good start, but it's missing this piece and it's missing that piece. And I really love that assignment they came up with because it shows the usage, right? It can get you started. It can get you over that fear of the blank page that we know all of our students have. But the thing that comes out of that first prompting is not exactly the right thing. It's a start. And then you need your own intellect, your own creativity to make it a better product. So I think, again, showing that it can be a tool, but also showing its limitations is an example of a good assignment to give our students that AI literacy and AI awareness.
Thank you. Shaden and Tracy, when does AI feel like a helpful learning tool versus a shortcut in your understanding of material that you're working to learn?
Well, I find AI being really useful for studying. Classes are limited to 1 or 2 hours, and most of the times we don't have questions when we are attending the class, but the questions come when we are studying. And while teachers are very helpful and try to answer our questions through email or in person, it's really hard for them to do it in a very short time because of your packed schedules. So AI becomes really handful because it's like having a tutor 24/7. I can ask unlimited questions, and I can even ask the AI to explain it to me in a very easy way. And it's been helping my education because now I don't only memorize the information, I understand it, thanks to the quizzes, thanks to podcasts that I can create using AI.
Yeah, I can actually second that. When it comes to studying, it is super helpful. It's also been helpful for brainstorming, just getting the ideas flowing, asking questions, going back and forth. I really engage with it like a conversational tool and not just something that I'm prompting and getting these responses back from, and I'm going to take that and make that my own work. And I also engage with it where if it does give me back something that the output I felt was just not adequate or it didn't give me what I was looking for, I engage with it and correct it as well. So it's kind of like I'm learning from it and it's learning from me while I'm going through brainstorming and studying as well. I don't think it's really helpful if you're using it in a sense of taking the output and putting that out as your own work. That's number one, a shortcut, but also you're not retaining that information. So when you're in the classroom, you have an exam, or you have to actually just recollect that information, you won't be able to because you didn't actually do the work. So I do advise against using it as your actual work, but for studying, brainstorming, drafting, I do think that it's super helpful.
Which is a great segue to the next question. I'm going to go to Stephen on this one. And this one entails academic integrity, original work, and ethical boundaries. So where should we draw the line between AI as a legitimate learning aid and AI use that crosses over into the realm of academic dishonesty? I think that's a great question for you.
I think that's a good question and a very difficult question to just have a line that I'll draw for you. But I can say that in the context of, as I mentioned before, students looking for research materials, the line that we're trying to draw in the libraries has something to do with whether or not the AI tools provided are what I sometimes call source forward and help with a good, deep material search, and then encourage the student especially to actually read the material and synthesize it themselves, versus other versions of these tools which will find the material and interpret it for you and even give answers. I've seen certain tools that will sort of give you a little chart that shows how true something is, certain statements based on other data sets, and I just think that that's way too far in the direction of interpretation on behalf of the user, of the student, and I really want to do my best to push back against that sort of thing. And in the context of an education, it would seem to be useful to have tools that increase the amount of engagement with material and critical thinking, and refuse tools that decrease the amount of critical thinking and engagement. And as we've seen, AI, along with other things, can do either. And we have to encounter those tools and see what they do and decide from there as teachers, I think.
Provost, would you like to take a stab at that, and then Jordan?
Sure. It's a moving line, I think, again, depending on what you're doing and where you're coming from. Something that we've done at Hostos that might be interesting to share is our faculty have developed syllabi statements that go on the syllabus to talk about the use of AI. And I said statements plural because it became very quickly apparent that you can't have one, right? You're never going to have a whole faculty body agree on what that syllabus statement should be. So we have 3 versions that faculty can pick from, and they can pick and choose depending on the class they're teaching, right? So one says AI is not permitted at all in this class, right, depending on what that class is. The other will say it's permitted, it's welcomed, it's embraced, and the third one, it's like Goldilocks. The third one is, it can use it, but sometimes when I specify, right? And so again, it promotes that transparency with the student to let them know what the expectations are. But we're finding students are saying, well, sometimes faculty don't say anything about AI. They aren't telling me. So one professor says that it's okay, and the other professor doesn't say anything at all, so I assume it's okay because they didn't say, and it creates confusion. So again, going back to the idea of transparency for promoting ethical use and making that moving boundary clear, the more we can tell our students where it's appropriate, where it's not appropriate, and to make them aware that it is a moving target, I think helps navigate that very difficult landscape.
Okay, Jordan? Thank you.
So I agree with everyone else that this is a very difficult question. a persistent worry that I have that influences the policies that I have in my courses are that I can set a limit that I believe to be reasonable, but the temptation's always there to go further. Modern consumer LLMs are so easy to use that it's not hard to just keep prompting and just get all the answers for what you're doing. So in my classes, my general policy is I discourage use on homework assignments. I've moved from individual assignments to you're allowed to work with someone else in the class. So like they're allowed to talk to each other. But I don't stop them necessarily. Like for a programming course, this is just not possible to police. Instead, I've included a course assessment that is not AI-able. So I have in-person exams, for example, which I didn't have in certain classes before, which encourage students that, well, the assignments will prepare you. You'll do very well on the exam if you actually do the assignment as intended. But if you're just skipping through everything, it will come back to bite you later. I found that exam scores dipped in 22-23 relative to homeworks, and they've been climbing back up again, which suggests that maybe it's on track, at least for the sorts of things I teach.
Thank you. Tracy, would you like to address that? So the question is, once again, where should we draw the line between AI being a legitimate aid to learn and use that crosses over into the academic dishonesty realm?
Yeah, I think when it comes to where is the line, it's a very fine one.
It is.
When you think about different courses, to me, I think when I'm in like a class that is very writing intensive, heavily writing intensive, I think in those situations, the line does get even finer because it depends on the actual AI literacy of the educator themselves, and if they are able to detect if something is actually AI written or AI generated versus what actually came from the student. So I think I'm still trying to grapple with where that line is, but I think the very first level of that is what is the AI literacy understanding of the educators themselves? And then from there, how can they incorporate that within their actual curricula to then build that AI literacy in the students? And when it comes to writing, I think going back to the editing exercise where it's like, hey, this is your draft, and let's review it. Do you think this is a great draft? Is there anything in there that you would change, why you would change it? I think that kind of changes the assignment a bit, where it's not the actual writing behind it that you're looking for, but you're actually looking now the thinking behind it, and you're actually building their editing skills. And to me, I actually had a class which was very similar. We had an assignment where we had to put in a prompt about like an organizational assessment. 50% of it had to be edited by us, and we had to explain why we made those edits. And that assignment actually opened my eyes to show just how much AI can hallucinate. A lot of the information was incorrect, and I wouldn't have noticed that if I just took that essay and pasted it and then sent it in, and I never looked at it, I would not have known. But that assignment in itself built my AI literacy and built my evaluation skills of AI to where now I'm more critical and I'm more aware of hallucinations. So I think there is a fine line, but there's also a line of educator AI literacy being embedded in the curriculum to then be able to build that within the students.
Chayton?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. So where do we draw the line between AI as a learning aid and AI as use of AI as academic dishonesty? What do you think that line is?
I think it's pretty clear, and the line is when we stop using AI as a tool that we can take inspiration from, and we use it as a tool that basically solves the assignments for us. So it's pretty clear. One thing is using AI, which is a great tool for brainstorming, editing, and putting ideas together, and then using AI to write a paper for you.
You just stole my next point, so I'm going to have to skip over something. That's okay. Do you think that, and this one may be more for Provost and Stephen, should academic integrity policies explicitly define acceptable and unacceptable uses of artificial intelligence, or should faculty retain flexibility to set these boundaries within their own courses? What are your thoughts?
It's another very big question. Thank you. I think it's a combination of the two. I think you need some guardrails. I think there needs to be some acknowledgement of AI and integrity and academic integrity policies. But again, I think they're going to vary from field to field and discipline to discipline, so they need to leave that latitude for departments to have some input into what's acceptable and what's not. So I think it's a combination.
Do you think in our institution there should be a institutional policy, like a blanket policy, or should it go by individual professors for their individual classes?
I think we need some kind of guidance. Yeah, I think we as an institution need some kind of guidance and guardrail for what's acceptable for AI.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Stephen?
Well, for me, the analogy is with the idea of plagiarism, which is something that we socially determined over time. It wasn't an idea of, moral turpitude from the beginning of time. It was something that we developed as a practice as scholars and professors and people who are interested in learning that plagiarism is wrong, right? But it became clear over time through practice. And I think that this technology is new enough that the boundaries of the practice are not fully clear yet. And so if we were to declare the rules too early, I think we might regret it. But we do want to be working towards declaring those rules by talking to each other, like we're doing now, more about what we consider to be right and wrong for lack of a better way of putting it, in that regard. And so, we should establish these things as a community and maybe even name it, right? Give it a word and work in that direction.
Okay, thank you. And finally, a little bit of a lightning round here for everybody on the panel. How do you think we can ensure that students learn to think first and prompt second, rather than allowing artificial intelligence to replace the reasoning process? And that might be like kind of a workforce question. Anybody have any thoughts on that? So how can we as instructors or members of a university community ensure that students are learning to think first and then prompt second, rather than allowing AI to replace their reasoning process? What do you think? What do you think?
I'll start off the lightning round. I think that, again, I think you had alluded to this earlier. You can't use it the right way unless you can think for yourself, right? So you do need to teach students how to think and what the content is, what the material is before you introduce AI materials. So I think, if we're thinking of how we're doing our syllabi, how we're doing our curriculum, if we're integrating, that's wonderful. But the beginning step, especially for our community college students, they need to be integrated into good academic habits of mind first, and then this comes on as a tool after that.
Okay, Jordan?
So I'll talk about this in terms of programming, just to make it, like computer programming, to make this a bit more concrete. So there are plenty of cases where knowing how to code with AI is sufficient for real work, and that's important, able to produce. But we train students for jobs in software engineering. I've been in that industry myself and maintain a lot of connections with it. Something that's striking to me is how mixed actual AI use is in these industries, where they find that it's often very useful, but used without sufficient control, it causes a mess. It brings teams to a halt as they have to redo months of work. I had a friend who was working weekends the past month fixing this kind of problem. So I think we can make it clear that for a lot of these roles, it gives you an edge if you actually know what you're doing in addition to being able to use AI. So there are legitimate reasons why one would want to have this background knowledge. So rather than just, like what I said before, making them take in-person exams, there's also a reason why I'm doing this for you. It's in your benefit to know this with, sort of like we've said before, domain expertise.
Stephen, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, with the context that I'm teaching graduate students in the main, also programming in a humanities context as well, I say to the students that I would 1,000 times take a domain expert who has never used AI to somebody who uses it all the time but doesn't know what they're doing in the context of the work. And we sometimes will, especially when they start, let them do what sometimes gets called somewhat derisively vibe coding, where you just kind of have the LLM build a thing for you. And sometimes it's a data visualization, sometimes it's an application or like a web app that looks up airline prices. And again, they're graduate students, so they'll show their tool, which looks really great. And it looks like it's doing the job, but if you just look one layer under the top layer, it is pretend. It's not doing it for real. It's hard-coded, it's faking the numbers, it's a fake visualization, and they experience that they don't want to do that again. You know what I mean? They're presenting in front of the class, and then it's revealed that it's BS. And so they learn very directly that they want to know what's going on under the hood. So that's my experience.
Tracy?
So funny you should mention vibe coding. I actually vibe code a lot for my day-to-day job. But what is helpful is that I do understand the basics of coding. So when something goes wrong, I'm able to fix it on my own and not have to go back and rely on Claude to fix it for me. And I think that's an underrated skill. Because when you are vibe coding, if you don't understand what's happening underneath the layer of it, you won't be able to fix it. And sometimes going back to Claude or whatever tool you may be using makes the problem worse. Sometimes you put the code in again and say, hey, fix this, and it breaks something else. So it is helpful for you to know how to do it yourself, because then you're able to fix it without relying on a tool that's probably going to make it worse. And I would also say, just to add on to that, sorry, can you repeat the question again? I had my answer, then you mentioned vibe coding, so it went out the window.
So how can we ensure that students learn to think first and then prompt second?
Yes, thank you, yes. So I also teach at LaGuardia Community College, and one thing I've been doing a lot more of, in addition to giving those in-person classes, tests, has also been in-class activities. So being able to focus more time or spend more time in the classroom on doing activities together. And of course, they're not using AI to do it, so it's prompting them to actually think about it and to actually utilize those skills and build those skills. And then I'm there to guide them through the process, things of that sort. So I have leaned a little bit less from giving strict homework or saying, hey, this is what we're doing in class, here's a lecture, and now go do that home, to where now I'm embedding more time in the classroom to do it in the class, and then whatever they didn't do or finish in class, then they'll finish it as homework.
Shane, would you like to address that?
Well, I think the key is in the teachers, because I've attended classes where teachers unfortunately only read the text. So I leave the class understanding basically anything. But when I've attended class where the teacher really worries about us understanding the material, I leave the class knowing what I'm going to ask the AI later when I'm studying. So in order to stop students to keep just copying the prompt, I think the key is that we receive a good education in classes.
Thank you. We'd like to engage the audience. If you have questions or comments or observations, please feel free to raise your hand. Maybe Albert, you're going to go around with the microphone? Okay, great. So we do have one question. I think yeah.
So actually more focused on the last question, the idea of using AI always wants students to get the right answer. I think sometimes getting the wrong answer is more important, so they can build some kind of context and fill in the gaps of what they don't understand.
That's a good point.
So yeah, when you were all answering, I was like, oh God, I want to say that, but yeah, thank you so much.
Great point. Great point.
Don't really have a question there, sorry.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's great.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Great conversation. I think it was Stephen who mentioned tools that are for research that actually help students engage with the material. Can you give us a few examples of those tools, if they really exist? And do we have them at CUNY?
That's a great question. Mostly, no. In the first instance, what the vendors have provided is what's very easy to build with AI, which is something that gives answers and summarizes. And that's contrary to the educational mission, if I may be so bold to say. And there are some examples. JSTOR is working on something that is just giving the answers. So it's just enabling a natural language search, right? Everybody remembers learning their Boolean, their and, their or, their not. This is at least saying you can ask a research question in a normal natural language fashion and you get good search results, and it stops there. And I think that that's a good start. So JSTOR, and then we'll see after that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for a really thoughtful discussion. I have many questions, but I'll just ask one. I've really been thinking today, coming here, about intentional teaching, right, and what that means, but also how that is related to intentional use of AI. And that's something that I'm struggling a bit with. And part of that seems to me is to not only teach students how to use AI ethically, but to teach them about AI itself. And that's where I see that missing from this conversation, that we're kind of jumping into, what does an ethical use look like in the classroom without thinking about or giving that much space to something that President Delgado mentioned, is what is the impact of using AI, and AI is not a force without people, without humans. I mean, that's all kind of interesting. So who is creating AI, right? Who is making money from AI? How is AI created? What are the different kinds of AI? What is the environmental impact of AI? So, and you see where I'm going with this. But my question is, what kind of spaces have you had on your campus or in your classrooms for having that discussion first, in order to educate about AI and kind of demystify AI? And there I'll cite Tira Tanksley at UCLA, who I find really useful thinking about these kinds of issues. But yeah, so what kind of courses, ethics on the AI that we can maybe have as part of the program before engaging with it intentionally?
So this is something that I teach. Actually, my lectures on this topic were last week and this coming week. And so I agree that this is extremely important and that there are many angles that this comes from. So I spent a lot of time talking about the history of AI. I think an important thing missing from a lot of discussions is that it's not new, and at all. It's probably older than any of us in this room. It's been part of our lives, kind of behind the scenes for decades as well, like longer than I've been alive. And that when we say AI, like in today, we're only talking about LLMs, which are a particular technology that companies have been able to put into products that are usable by the regular person. That's really the big thing that has happened in the last 4 years that differentiates this from previous time. So I write a lot on this issue for researchers in my field and adjacent field for the purpose of demystifying. We don't know how the systems work like we used to because they're proprietary in a way that they weren't before. So there's a lot of speculation. Sometimes we know at a high level. We know that there's a lot of lobbying, for example, for water rights, like this was mentioned earlier today. And so there's often like severe environmental impact that usually affects someone other than me directly, right, when it comes to these issues. Though like my hometown or next to it, there was this big issue building an AI data center that was very contentious because of these sorts of problems. And then I also talk about more field-specific things, so working in linguistics. As I guess it's worth asking, like, what language do people use when communicating with LLMs? Like English, probably? You can raise your hand if you use something other than English. And is that language either Spanish, French, or Mandarin, which is almost it? Well, the vast majority of people in the world aren't native speakers of any of those languages. So this has been a persistent issue where there's not actually enough data out there to train something that works as well as an LLM as an English-based LLM works. So there are all kinds of equity issues both within the US and beyond that we need to think about here.
I think Provost Fabrizio has something to add. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, and thank you. I wanted to add that while we're thinking about where we create spaces for our students, that's something we also haven't talked about. It's so important to create spaces for our faculty. I think there's still a tremendous need for professional development for our faculty in really understanding AI. I mean, everyone here I know does because you're part of this showcase, right? But there's a lot of faculty who feel much more uncomfortable. And I want to thank our Director of EdTech, Carlos Guevara. We had a whole semester last semester talking about AI conversations and bringing faculty together about that to have tools and strategies for learning about it themselves, right? So I think that that's also an important piece of this as we think about our students. And I think has come up in some of the answers today, we also have to think about our faculty and the support that they need in this world.
Thank you. Eddie, I think you had something to add. Did you want to say something before? You had your hand up. No? Okay. Any other questions? Yes, over here.
Hey.
Oh, in the back? Okay, go ahead.
Hey.
Yep.
Tracy, this is largely for you, but anyone is welcome to respond to this. Laura Todd, I am in CUNY Central, technology trainer. Many people have seen my head in workshops. But also, Tracy, I'm third cohort of Lehman's EDAL program. Also, I'm an adjunct professor for adults in an online degree completion program. So my question for you is, to me, AI misuse by students is kind of a symptom of students not really seeing the connection of that learning to real world value. So both as a doctoral student myself and as an instructor, I'm trying to find ways to make sure that the students see the connection between the course content and their lives and the real world value. What do you think about that idea? Because in my perspective, students are less likely to misuse AI if they are passionate about what they're learning because they see the connection.
That is actually a really good observation. I would say, yes, I have seen that as well. I would also take it one step further that I do feel like AI misuse also just comes from really just not understanding the tool. And also when you're short on time, when you have work, when you want to get a good grade, you want to turn things in, people are going to turn to something that is going to help them out when it comes to time. I think being intentional about understanding the demographics of your students, understanding what they have going on outside of work and things of that sort, making sure that, we're being intentional about, if I give an assignment, a 10-page paper this week, maybe 2 weeks later, I shouldn't give them another 10-page paper, like just being a little bit more intentional with how we're designing our curricular, how we're going about designing our assignments would probably help out a little bit more with the AI misuse, giving them more time. And I also think just having that conversation with them about how AI is showing up in the real world and giving them examples of AI misuse. I actually just read an article about a lawyer who ended up getting disbarred because he was citing fake cases. And when you have AI misuse to that extent, and you could bring that experience to the classroom, you can really paint the picture of how important it is to use it the right way and not to just use it as a shortcut, and then show them the implication and the consequences if they don't use it the right way. And I think that's what will hit.
Thank you, Tracy. I have one more question, which since we have a chief academic officer here for a college, I want to address this one for you. If you could design the ideal college classroom 5 years down the road, right? But AI is present, and where AI is present, but learning remains the central factor, what would that classroom look like? What do you think? Because we always have to look down the road. What's around the curve?
Thank you for that question. That's a hard one.
It is.
Yes, I think.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, it's fine. But I think more about what the classroom itself looks like. I'm thinking about the people who are in the classroom, and I'm thinking that 5 years down the road, it would be wonderful to have everyone feeling a shared understanding, because I feel that's what we're struggling with right now, right? I feel like we're struggling with, well, where are we with what we're doing? How do we use it? What's ethical? What's not ethical? And if in 5 years from now, the people have some kind of shared understanding of what it is we're dealing with, that would make the educational experience that much better. So rather than, I'm not conceptualizing the space, but rather the occupants of it would be the ideal.
Thank you. And I believe we have one last question from, okay.
Great morning, everyone. Pleasure to meet you all, and thank you all for putting this amazing conference and panel together. I'm George Nunez, founder and CEO of Bronx Tech Hub. We're a nonprofit where we're building a tech ecosystem focused on workforce development, education, entrepreneurial access. So we help people get into AI and climate careers. My quick question to you all is this AI bubble, right? Like everybody's trying to figure out what's next. What's the next wave of this? And people are nervous, people are anxious. Everyone sees what's going on. You all presented use cases of people using, fake data or fake cases, or even, companies laying people off, right? People cheating on their exams. What do you guys think is going, and how do you guys think people can best prepare or capture this bubble or this wave?
Anybody want to take a stab at that? Stephen? And then
in terms of learning, I would say that learning to use these tools is the matter of a few weeks. Now, in terms of critical engagement of how the technology works and its impacts on the society, that's much more. But as far as just learning how to get good material out of these things, it's not that hard. So the thing that would be focused on to catch the bubble would be to focus on the material of becoming a real domain expert.
Jordan?
Well, you used the term bubble, which implies popping at some point. And it may take too long to become a domain expert if we're expecting the bubble to pop. But I have to say that's a good idea. You can look at trends of where things are going. So companies are moving to more expensive token-based cost structures, for example, which would imply that you should be judicious with how many and what kind of prompts you're making. I think planning in that kind of direction for where the technology and the market is going could be very useful long term if you don't want to get caught in the pop part of it.
Thank you. There are no further questions from our audience. Yep, one more, quick. One more, real quick. All right, two more real quick. We want to try to keep this ship running. One more question, okay. I think it was the gentleman, no?
Fighting for the microphone. Thank you, everyone. This was very insightful. I think I'm offering something that adds on to Tracy's strategies in the classroom, starting the conversation in the classroom, which I've also started doing. Oh, I'm Professor Diaz from Hostos. And also piggyback on the question from the back that when you start the assignments and the conversation with students in the classroom, you connect to their lived experiences. And I found that making the assignments explicit to their lived experiences counters a little bit of the mindless use of the LLMs, no? So not every subject matter, I teach psychology, so it's easy for me to always connect either to personal experiences or to pop culture and media, which is a proxy. So that has been super helpful because then the students have to prompt the AI differently in already inserting their lived experience. So I was wondering if you're doing or seeing some of that when you start the assignments in the classroom, and if you're favoring or even asking students to do that intentionally, because that has been for me very helpful. And then in the grading, when it comes to the statements on the syllabi, I allow AI use in my classroom, obviously. And what I penalize the students for is generic language and generic statements. Instead of saying, you used AI, I tell them, you didn't get specific enough here. So is that something that you're doing and other techniques sort of on that line?
Yeah, I would say I also provide them with like an actual template of how to prompt. And part of it does include like fill in the blanks here and there and things of that sort. So that was some way that I have been just combating it. More so in my class where I'm a teaching assistant, and I have to go by what the stipulations that the professor said and things of that sort. I don't really have that much flexibility in those situations, but for my own, yeah, I do give them that template and show them to insert and things of that sort. And I do agree that it does work out a little bit differently.
Thank you, Tracy. Big round of applause for our panelists: Jordan, Provost Fabrizio, Stephen Zweibel, Tracy, and Shaden. Thank you very much. We have a wonderful set of demonstrations, hands-on exercises. Please enjoy the rest of the day. And once again, the important thing is that you take something away from here that you didn't know before. Thanks very much for coming. Go ahead, Albert.
Just some quick housekeeping things. Okay.
Oh, you got a microphone. Go ahead.
No, I'm gonna use this one.
Go ahead. It's
Thanks. So, when you guys go to the co-current sessions back in the library, there's 5 rooms that the sessions are in. You should see them on the program. When it comes to lunchtime, just make sure that you go to 131, you pick up your lunch, and then you can go to any of the other 5 rooms. You can even go outside. It's nice and sit. Wherever you want to go to have lunch and have discussions with the people in the rooms, you can do that. So we'll see you guys back here later on this afternoon. Thank you.